Chapter 16. Gerard Comes Closer.
Ma, I don't feel good.
Bruno was in his mother's bedroom. He walked very slowly into her bathroom and got the bottle of whiskey he had hidden there, but he dropped it on the floor. He couldn't control his hands.
Charlie?
His mother said and looked worried.
I can't breathe, Ma.
He tore his clothes off.
Oh, God! I'll get a doctor, his mother said. No! They'll take me away, he screamed. Look at my hands, Ma!
His middle fingers were bent tightly inside his hand. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't move them.
Look, Ma! Charlie!
His mother shouted. Bruno fell to the floor. He couldn't speak normally.
Dom, Masum, Tahem, Masum.
Then a doctor came and gave Bruno some medicine, and he went to sleep. The drink is killing him, the doctor told Bruno's mother. He must stop. Bruno woke up later and saw Gerard standing near the bed.
I'm sorry to wake you, Gerard said with his stupid smile, but I found something. Remember this?
He threw Guy's book onto the bed.
I remember,
Bruno said.
I got this book at the Hotel La Fonda. It's Haynes's book. You met him 18 months ago on the train to Santa Fe, didn't you? Gerard said.
No, Bruno said. I found the book on the train, that's all. I wanted to send it to Guy, but I lost it. I met him in December.
So you made calls to Metcalf 18 months ago, and you didn't even know Mr. Haynes? Gerard asked. I found the phone bills.
Yeah, I phoned about the book, Bruno said angrily.
And you called before the murder, but you didn't call after, Gerard said. Why not?
I don't know, Bruno shouted. I'm tired of murder.
Oh, I believe that, Gerard said. I believe that.
A few moments later, Guy had a phone call from Bruno in his office.
Gerard knows about the book and the phone calls I made to Metcalf,
Bruno said very quietly, as if someone was listening.
But I told him the calls were about the book, and we met in December, all right?
All right, Guy said and put the phone down. Gerard was coming closer and closer, but he couldn't stop it. He looked at the letter lying next to the phone. It was from his friend, Bob Treacher, in Canada. I have an important job in Alberta. I want you to build a bridge for me as soon as possible. Right now. Bob.
Nobody knows who murdered Guy Haynes's first wife, Miriam,
Gerard said to Bruno in his office.
I know,
Bruno said.
Did you talk to Guy about Miriam? You're interested in murder, Gerard said.
I didn't talk to him about it, Bruno said.
Do you think he planned it? Gerard asked.
No, I don't,
Bruno said angrily.
You obviously don't know the type of man Guy Haynes is. He's a great architect.
Gerard suddenly called out.
Come in, please, Mr. Haynes.
He saw Bruno jump with surprise as Guy walked into the room.
Did you and Charles ever talk about your wife's murder, Mr. Haynes? Gerard asked.
No, Guy said.
Did he ever tell you he wanted to murder his father? Gerard asked.
He had that slow, stupid smile on his face. No, Guy said. Gerard held up Guy's book.
Charles found this on the train, but you didn't meet on the train, did you?
No, Guy said.
The waiter who brought dinner to the two of you in Charles's room on the train says you did, Mr. Haynes,
Gerard said, looking into Guy's eyes all the time. Guy felt hot with shame. He couldn't speak.
So what?
Bruno said angrily.
So why are you both lying? Gerard asked. Your wife was murdered, Mr. Haynes, a few days after you two met, and your father was murdered a few months later, Charles. Did you plan something?
We planned nothing, Guy said.
Did Charles tell you he wanted his father dead, Mr. Haynes? Perhaps you were frightened to tell me about it?
Gerard asked. No, Guy said. He felt himself going deeper and deeper into his own lies. And when would Gerard find out the truth? Did he know it already? Bruno and Guy left the office together.
You know,
Bruno said.
he's looking for other people. Gerard doesn't think we did it. We had no reason to do it, did we?
Gerard went to see Anne at home late one autumn afternoon.
I think, he said, that Charles Bruno told your husband about this plan to murder his father, and your husband didn't want to talk about it. Then, if your husband knew Miriam might die too, they had a kind of secret, didn't they?
Guy couldn't do a thing like that, Anne said.
Do you think they met in March when Charles's father died and you don't know about it?
Gerard asked.
It's possible,
Anne said.
but she didn't know why she said it. When was that fight, she thought? February? March? And was it with Bruno? That was it. Guy tried to stop Bruno killing his father.
How was your husband in March, Mrs. Haynes?
Gerard asked. He was nervous, she said. It was a difficult time. His work. She stopped speaking.
Gerard looked at her. Then he smiled and said,
Call me if you think of anything you know, Mrs. Haynes,
and left quietly. A few minutes later, Anne saw Gerard outside the house, sitting in his car and writing notes.
Why did I say that about March? Is he writing about that? She thought.
Gerard was here, Anne said that night as soon as Guy came home.
He wanted to know about March, if you knew Bruno had planned his father's murder for that month.
Guy poured a glass of whiskey. Then he heard himself saying, Look, Anne, Bruno told me on the train that he wanted his father dead. I'm not going to say anything because the police can use that to hang an innocent man. Anne said gently,
Yes, what you're doing is right.
And she smiled.
It's terrible, isn't it? Murder.
Guy hated his lies. He felt empty inside. He thought he was worse than Bruno, who was honestly bad. Even if he was never caught, he couldn't live with Anne like this. Chapter 17. The Perfect Crime. Gerard smiled happily at Chief of Police Phil Dowland and said,
Can't you guess?
About Samuel Bruno's murder? Dowland asked. You think his son Charles did it, don't you? He didn't like Gerard because he was a private detective and he didn't work by police rules.
No.
Gerard's smile grew wider.
But I think he did another murder. Do you know Guy Haynes?
Yes, Dowland said. His wife was murdered last June.
Guy Haynes and Charles Bruno met on a train to Santa Fe 10 days before Miriam Haynes died, Gerard said.
You think Bruno killed her? Dowland asked. You've got no proof.
Yes, I have, Gerard said happily. I've spoken to a friend of Bruno's, Edward Wilson, who saw him going to the railway station in Santa Fe on the day of Miriam's murder, a taxi driver in Metcalf who drove Bruno to the amusement park the very night Miriam Haynes died, and a man he tried to buy whiskey from near the amusement park, and another taxi driver who saw him too. And I've got bills of phone calls Bruno made to Metcalf.
But why did Bruno murder this woman? Dowland said, laughing. Because he met her husband on a train?
No, Gerard said. You don't see, do you? It was a plan. Bruno wanted Guy to kill his father, and he did.
Guy Haines? Dowland shouted. Oh, this is...
Yes, Guy Haines, Gerard said. He didn't want to, but he had to after Bruno murdered his wife. Guy was frightened. It was all Bruno's idea, the perfect crime. There was no reason for Guy and Bruno to murder these two people. They thought the police could never find them.
What happens now? Dowland asked.
I'm going on holiday, Gerard said. I want to check some more details about Guy Haines. I can wait a few weeks.
Chapter 18. A Terrible Accident. Guy was living in Canada and building his bridge. He came home one weekend and saw a mess in the house only one person could make. Bruno was here, he said. Yes, Anne said. You know he's mad, don't you? Guy said. Anne didn't answer, and Guy looked at her carefully. Anne thought, I know he's the one who wrote that letter to me in March, and the one you had a fight with. I know there's something. Then she said, Guy, I'm going to have a baby. Are you pleased? A baby? Guy said, and he laughed with happiness. The next day, Bob Treacher came from Canada to stay with Guy and Anne. It was a sunny day, and the police had called to say that they had no more questions for Guy and Bruno about his father's murder. Anne was pregnant. He had a good job. He felt his life was changing, and all the bad things were in the past. The phone rang, and Anne answered. Oh, hello, she said. Yes, come with us. We'll meet you by the boat. She said to Guy, That was Bruno. He's coming with us on the India today. And suddenly Guy felt everything seemed black again. It always came back. They stopped for a friend of Anne's, Helen Hayburn, on the way to the boat, and Bruno was waiting for them when they arrived. Bruno was very excited. Come on, Guy, he shouted. This is a great day. We've won. Won what? Anne asked, and Guy went cold inside. He looked at Bruno. Have a drink, said Bruno, offering Anne his bottle of whiskey. No, thank you, she said. Come on, everybody, Bruno shouted. Let's go! The boat moved quickly over the gray sea, and the wind was quite strong. Bruno ran about the boat. Sit down, Bob said. Who are you? Bruno asked drunkenly. A friend of Guy's? Yes, Bob said politely. I've known Guy all his life, Bruno shouted. Have you? Guy saw Anne look at him with surprise. Every time with Bruno, something bad happened. When will he say it? Guy thought. The truth. He could say anything, do anything, for the rest of my life. Come on, let's sing, Bruno said. Guy, sing with me. Oh, sit down, Helen said to Bruno. Yes, sit down, Guy said, and keep quiet. Bruno started to cry. They didn't want him. He tried to walk away from all of them, even Guy. Suddenly, a large wave came up and hit the boat hard. The wave covered Bruno, and with a scream he fell into the sea. Bruno! Guy shouted. He jumped into the sea. It was very cold, and the waves seemed to be as high as mountains. He saw Bruno's head very far away. Guy! Bruno called once. A dying man. Guy swam towards the place where he had seen Bruno. Then he dived down into the cold gray water. The sea turned him round and round and round. There was nothing. Guy could see nothing. He was the loneliest man in the world. Where was his friend, his brother? Chapter 19. The End at Last. Early one morning, Guy got out of bed. He was very lonely without Bruno. He carried all the guilt inside himself now. He picked up some pieces of paper. and started to write about everything: the train, Miriam, how he murdered Bruno's father. He left it for Anne to read. Anne is good, Guy thought. The rest of us, Bruno, me, his father, Miriam, Gerard, all of us are bad. Then he thought of Miriam's boyfriend, Owen Markham. He had loved Miriam. He was the father of her child. Guy remembered Owen at the inquest, where he seemed calm and gentle. Suddenly, Guy needed to talk to Owen. It was important, and after writing to Anne, it was the next thing he had to do. He took a plane for Houston, Texas, where Owen Markham now lived. Gerard had come back from holiday after Bruno died, and Guy thought Gerard might follow him to Houston. He looked carefully at the other passengers on the plane, but Gerard was not there. After asking some questions in different places in Houston, Guy found Owen in a bar. "I need to talk to you," Guy said. "I've got a room at the Rice Hotel. Please." Owen looked at Guy with his calm brown eyes for a long time. Then he said, "All right." In the hotel room, they drank whiskey. Like the first time with Bruno, Guy thought. "I know the man who killed Miriam," Guy said. "I didn't stop him. I'm sorry. I know you loved Miriam." "No, I didn't," Owen said, and drank some whiskey. He spoke slowly. "And I didn't want that child. She did that to make me marry her." It was all wrong. Owen didn't care. But Guy had to continue. "You must listen to me," Guy said. "You must understand. This man, Miriam's murderer, his name was Bruno, he made me do a murder too. His father. You see, we met on a train, and Bruno said we should do the murders and the police would never catch us. He hated his father, Owen. It was frightening. I said I had some problems with Miriam, but I wanted to divorce her. I said no to her murder, but then he killed Miriam, and I only knew after he had done it. You understand? I said no. But after her murder, Bruno phoned me again and wrote letters telling me to murder his father. I was frightened he would tell my girlfriend that I knew about Miriam's murder, and I was tired of it all, so tired, so I said yes, and I agreed to kill his father. I only wanted Bruno to go away, that's all. I had to do it. Owen, I'm guilty too. Do you hate me?" "Hate you for what?" Owen asked, stupidly. "I don't know you. Who did you murder?" Guy felt very tired. "You have to go," he said to Owen. "You don't understand." Owen was very drunk, and he didn't move. "I'll call a taxi for you," Guy said. But where was the phone? Guy looked on the floor and saw it under the bed. The phone was lying near his chair, so that someone could listen to everything he was saying. He picked it up. "Hello?" he said. "Hello, Mr. Haynes," Gerard's voice said. "I heard what you said to Mr. Markham. May I come in?" Guy opened the door and looked at Gerard's big smile. Guy tried to speak, but he said something completely different from what he wanted. He said,